see that part of the application. The city attorney is here, and I think I would ask him to weigh in on that analysis. We simply just don't think that, we think the variance was the right approach, but if the city attorney could provide further comment.
Mr. Shepherd?
Sure. Thank you, Chair, members of the commission. First off, you're correct that, the application package talks about, a lawful nonconformity assertion. That is more akin to an administrative appeal in the context of the kind of procedural posture of the application or of that argument. The administrative appeal is not in front of you tonight. It is simply the variance application. So we're not asking you to make a decision up or down on whether or not there is a lawful non-conforming use. We're not taking a position on that tonight. We're simply asking you to review the variance application.
All right, so just if I can clarify a little bit so we all are on the same page. If the council ends up granting this variance, then the enforcement action stops. If the council rejects this variance request, then do we go back to administrative enforcement on possibly a legally non-conforming use?
Sure. Chair, that's correct in terms of the posture here. The variance application is the opportunity for the applicant to bring their property into compliance with the city code through the variance, which would be ultimately potentially granted by the city council. Once that variance is granted, then the applicant is kind of square vis-a-vis the city code because of the approval. If the city council ultimately denies the variance, then we have a dock that is in violation of the city code, and enforcement would follow from there.
Okay, but I'm looking at an aerial photo from 2002 that predates modern zoning codes on dock size. How can we argue that this wouldn't be legally non-conforming?
Say that again, Dusty.
Well, just looking at the aerial photos from 2002, which predates the Shorewood adopting the more strict dock regulations. The dock was already there, and you can tell that it's a double width and within 8 feet of the shore. And I'm just trying to figure out why we're going for the variance first versus legally non-conforming.
Again, the lawful non-conforming use argument is a administrative appeal to the enforcement of the code. That wasn't timely filed, as I understand it. The variance application is a timely filed variance application. So that is that's the application that's under consideration tonight.
Okay, so well, for everyone's clarification, we're only talking about variances tonight.
But if Chair, if I could press the city attorney a bit further, I understand that the agenda item here is consideration of variance. I understand that that's our job to consider and make recommendations on. But nevertheless, the issue of legal nonconformity does bear on a variance decision. If I can illustrate with a generic example, suppose there's a non-conforming lot, there's a house on the non-conforming lot, and the applicant wants to put an addition on the non-conforming lot. In such a case, the addition doesn't qualify as a legally non-conforming structure, but the discussion of the house being legally non-conforming is relevant because that generally forms the basis of the decision to grant a variance. And so here, if I can press you further, has the city taken no position on whether this could be considered a legally non-conforming structure, or has it decided no, it's not, hence apply for a variance was the recommendation? Can you give an answer on that, or are you not in a position to answer that?
Sure. City staff is not taking a position on whether there's a lawful non-conforming use here tonight. we're just taking a position as outlined in the memo on the variance application and the request. Certainly, I take your point with respect to the idea of a use being in predating city code. And certainly if you look at the PowerPoint just presented and the staff report from Ms. Lindahl, you'll see that staff is recommending and it's the Planning Commission can consider the fact that we have a dock that's been there for 36 years. And that can certainly be a factor within the analysis that we're asking you to do with respect to the practical difficulties test.
Thank you.
Commissioner Huskins, did you have a question?
Yes, I just wanted to know for the record, was there a variance request made by the Labadies in 2012 prior to the dock maintenance and third section addition?
It is, Mr. Chair. It is my understanding that the dock was simply installed, that no variance was applied for, that the slip was part of the work for fixing, according to the applicant, the footings on the end of the dock, and that slip was installed by one of the dock companies I have, but I don't believe a permit or a variance was applied for.
Okay. I have a second question. That is, are there any legal prohibitions on approving variances retroactively for work that was completed already prior to the variance being applied for?
Chair, members of the commission, no, there isn't. I mean, this happens frequently where someone might have a property that is considered in violation of the city code, and then they would apply for a variance as a way to remedy that problem and achieve compliance with the city code.
And a final question, and that is, we're talking about one dock on the lagoon, and I'm wondering if there are any precedents on any of the other docks as to their compliance with the code from 2006 or not.
What I would say is that other dock situations are going to be unique in the different ways, whether it's the structure of the dock, whether it's an allowed dock or not. What you have in front of you tonight is the commission is this dock, and the variance request related to this dock, and that's the only thing that's in front of the commission tonight.
Thank you.
All right, any more questions for staff before we open it up to the applicants?
I just want to clarify on the variance number 2 for the setback from the ordinary high water. So right now the dock is 1 foot short of meeting compliance. Is that correct?
Ms. Lindahl?
No, the dock is actually 1 foot from the shoreline where 8 feet is required at its nearest.
Okay.
All right, well, it looks like we're done with questions now for staff. Is the applicant here, and would you like to speak to us? Because I see at least one of the applicants is here. And yeah, go ahead, Mayor Labadie, if you'd like to speak. Looks like you've got your hand up and you shouldn't be muted. But we can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Oh, I can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. So I would prefer this evening if you refer to me just as Jennifer Labadie. And at this point in time, I will just hold for any questions that the Planning Commission has and reserve a right to speak at the end, please.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Are there any questions for the applicant from the commission?
I do have one, if I could go first again.
Go ahead.
So, Jennifer, Can you comment on the precise history of this dock? We know from the packet that there is information, aerial photos suggesting that a dock was in place since 1985, but there has been in the packet, particularly in the comments from the dock maintenance professionals, indications that the dock was certainly repaired and maintained, and perhaps enlarged or expanded. Do you have a precise timeline that you could share with us on, in particular, the footprint of the dock? When were any changes to the footprint of the dock made to your knowledge?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. The earliest aerial photo that is part of the City of Shorewood's permanent file relating to this property is dated April 1985. And then the earliest Hennepin County aerial image is dated 1989. The current house was built at the address at in the year 2000. My husband and myself moved in 2010. At the time we moved in 2010, there was a dock in the backyard. There are neighbors who are very familiar with the house as it was built in the year 2000. In fact, a neighbor who performed work on the home itself and was familiar with the landscaping and the backyard work. And her statement indicates that the dock was in existence in the current location in the year 2000. So there is a statement to that point. Prior to the year 2000, there are the aerial photos. The dock itself, we had the rear end of the dock that is located the furthest point from the shoreline began to sink, and we hired professional dock installers, and two different companies came and performed repair work lifting up the end of the dock. The dock was not removed from the water at that point. Mud plates were placed under the footers, and the mud plates are a tool that is commonly used in the dock installation industry when they have a location that's considered substandard soil. And at that point in time, we did add the second boathouse, which is on the north side of the dock. Upon the advice of the installers, we simply located it where they recommended installing it. I don't know if that answered all your questions, Commissioner, and if not, I would like to clarify if you have any other questions.
Yeah, just because I think what's most relevant is the footprint of the dock, whether the width and the footprint itself. The maintenance of a dock happens all the time. But so I'm looking at Exhibit E, which is aerial imagery from 2004, which is 2 years prior to the relevant code section being adopted, restricting the footprints of docks. And what I'm seeing on the aerial photo is that it has, from the aerial photo at least, the same footprint as it currently has. Is that correct or not?
No, that's incorrect. It appears the same. However, the dock section on the most northern side, or in other words, if we're talking about Exhibit E, the dock section closest to the arrow, which has been added for emphasis, that section did not exist at the time that we purchased the home. So although it looks similar to our current dock, the section that is located on the north side of the dock was added to the section that exists in Exhibit E on the south side. So the dock on the south side is in the exact same position it has been in all of the exhibits. The footers or the pipes that lead down to the footers have not been removed from that portion of the dock.
And that portion was added in 2012, is that correct?
No, the portion of the dock that I'm referring to where the footers have never moved is the south side of the dock. that is the side that has been in existence at least since 1985. The north side of the dock, looking at Exhibit E, which is the one closest to the arrow added for emphasis, that portion was added in 2012.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just want to clarify, why is it in the picture from 2004 if it was added in 2012?
That was a
Or did it get removed and then re-added?
portion that was belonged to the former homeowners, and that portion did not exist when we bought the home.
Okay. And is that within 8 feet of the shoreline on that side of the dock? High water?
To be honest, I don't know. And Commissioner Rydell just brought up a very good point. It's not the shoreline, it's the ordinary high water mark. And that's right now hard to determine where it is due to the fact the lake is down several feet due to the drought conditions from last summer.
All right, let's bring this back to Ms. Lindahl. Can you comment on whether or not the north portion of the dock is in violation?
There are two violations. The entire section on the front there, that the main dock goes out, that entire front section is in violation. It ranges from about 1 foot from approximately the shoreline to 4 feet from the shoreline. We do not have a survey with the OHW. The ordinary high water level for Lake Minnetonka, according to the watershed, is 929.4. And based on the surveys that were in the packet, it is a little bit tricky, but we think it's about 1 to 4 feet from the OHW, where 8 feet is required. So 4
Okay,
feet.
we're talking on both sides of where you enter the dock. There's the south side on your left and the north side on your right. Both sides are
Both too close. That's correct.
okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Are there any other questions for the applicants?
Jennifer, when were you first aware that the dock was not in compliance?
We received notice of the violation this past fall, October. I'm not exactly sure the date. Give me one moment.
That's fine. It was in October.
Yes.
So you had no knowledge of that when you bought the house or anything before that time?
That's correct. In fact, we had the professional dock installers come, and we had them install the addition to the dock and perform the repair work based on their professional opinion. So we relied on the professionals that we hired in this matter.
All right. Any more questions for the applicants?
Well, since we have the applicant, I guess the same question, and I think it's appropriate, that I posed to the city attorneys, that the status of this dock is it existed, a dock existed prior to the modern code ordinance being put into effect. What we were just discussing is relevant because there were modifications made to the dock after the modern code ordinance was put into effect. In this case, the legally non-conforming argument hinges upon the use of the dock. And can you comment on that?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, do you want me to comment on the use of the dock, what we use it for, or?
Well, but I think it's appropriate to ask you if you think this is a legally non-conforming structure or not. Or if
Just to clarify,
yeah.
We're only talking about variances, but
we
as
are.
part of, just to clarify.
Because I really do think this is relevant, that a variance based upon a legally non-conforming structure is different than a variance that is simply based upon an otherwise fully conforming situation here. And so I guess what I'm suggesting is the existing dock that existed prior to 2006, I think would qualify as legally non-conforming. And then I think that the modifications that were made afterwards might not. And so those might be the basis of the variance. Is that the argument that you're making to council, or to us first and then to council?
That was the thought process that I went through when I prepared the application for a variance. We have one dock that has been in existence for over 30 years and a newly installed dock. However, in the alternative that argument did not succeed, that is also why I sought a variance. I do feel the requirements of a variance as set forth in our city code are met in this situation, and I do feel a variance is appropriate in this situation.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. Any more questions for the applicants?
Yes, I do, Chair Matty.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Jennifer, there are two aspects to the variance that you're requesting. And when we make our recommendation, I'm going to assume that we'll discuss each of them separately. My question to you is, are they, in your mind, tied together, meaning that a variance on the 7 foot wide portions of the dock is separate or is contingent upon also getting the variance from not having to move it beyond the high water, ordinary high water mark?
Although they are treated in one application for a variance request, they are two distinct issues. I think that the issues stand separately.
So I can assume that if one were approved and the other was not approved, that would not dampen your use of the dock or would not be an unsatisfactory outcome for you.
Commissioner, I didn't say that. It would hamper the use of the dock, and it would hamper the safety of the dock, because the dock itself, by hugging the shoreline and not meeting the 8-foot requirement, is the safest possible outline of the dock, as stated by two dock professionals. And in both of their opinions, they feel extending it out further could result in an unstable dock situation versus leaving it where it has been. Also, on the second issue, the two dock catwalks that put together exceed the 4 feet. That's also a safety issue, because it allows full access of the boat from either side on the newly installed dock and from the one side on the original dock that it is attached to. So I do feel this is a safety issue relating to both aspects of this variance request.
Thank you.
All right, any more questions for the applicant, or shall we move into public testimony?
I have one more question. So
Go ahead, Commissioner
the
Eggenberger.
8-foot catwalk, was it 8 foot when you installed the second boathouse?
Pardon me, Commissioner Eggenberger, could you please restate that? I just didn't hear.
Sure. The 8-foot catwalk, was that 8 feet when you installed the second boathouse, or was it shorter than that before you installed the second boathouse?
The installation of the second boathouse caused it to be the 7-foot width.
Okay.
The before the installation of that boathouse, it was not that width. I would also like to point out that in the opinion of the dock installers and my neighbors, extending the dock out into the lagoon hampers the traversability of the lagoon itself, because obviously the structure is taking up more water space. And also we do run the risk, as indicated in the DNR permits and the attached exhibits relating to the dredging. A valid DNR permit was obtained and channels were dredged to each of the properties, including mine. And it is possible that moving the dock backwards could place it in the dredged channel, which definitely would make it more unstable and more difficult to secure in a safe manner.
If I may follow up on that. So in the application packet, in discussing the variance application, much of the argument, or nearly all of the argument, centers on what you've just been describing, the professional opinion that extending or moving the dock further out might be problematic. There isn't much that describes the basis for the variance for the double width. Could you comment on that? Just in the packet, in terms of the practical difficulty of not having a dock with the double width in the center, there isn't much that's said. Can you comment on that?
It is just, that is the way it was configured and installed by the professional dock installers. They installed it that way, as I said, for safety of access to the boat. And, you know, again, we just relied on the advice of the professional installers when we hired the second boat lift to be put on, and I'll stand for any other questions.
No further questions from me. Thank you.
Actually, I think I misspoke. I meant boat house, not boat lift. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any other questions from the commission? All right, seeing none, we're going to move this into a public input. So anyone who wants to speak to this issue may. We're going to be limiting it to 3 minutes. And I'm just going to beg everyone to try to keep to 3 minutes, try not to repeat too many times. And remember, these, we're all neighbors here. Some of the letters I already have read. There's some emotional, just please be decent. No need for character assassinations. Let's get out all the facts that we need so we can make an informed decision. With that, let's open it up to the public input. Again, please keep your comments to 3 minutes and use the raise your hand function, which is under reactions, raise hand. And we'll let Director Darling, I think, manage muting and unmuting. Oh, and one other thing I did forget to say is we do need your real name and street address to take any input or comments.
Chair Matty, I see one person with their hand raised, identified as Jeff Cameron.
Mr. Cameron, we'll unmute you and you can tell us what you want.
Hello, my name is Jeff Cameron. I live at 27695 Island View Road, just up the street from this property. And this is a pretty clear case of no variance allowed. She had one slip in 2006. It shows on Exhibit F, the summer of 2006. The code was changed in October of 2006, just after this picture was taken. In 2015, another exhibit, Exhibit I in her packet, shows the two docks. She substantially added another slip and widen the center section. She's arguing that she can't make the dock longer, but she doesn't have to make the dock longer. What she has to do is move those parts that are parallel to the shore out, and it effectively makes her slips shorter. But that's not the fault of the city that she chose to make it that way. And, you know, if the commission believes that maybe just the new stuff that was added in 2012, and her experts even have evidence in their written testimony that shows that they installed the docks into that extended or expansion in 2012. It doesn't affect the length of the dock. And, you know, she talks about the center portion being 7 feet wide and that it's a safety hazard to have a 3.5 foot dock. Standard dock sections are 3.5 to 4 feet, and people put boats on either side of those docks all the time. So it's not a substantial hardship to have a 3.5 foot dock. Most people on the lake have that. So there's no reason why changing the width of the center section meets the criteria that she's set out by her expert testimony, saying that she can lengthen the dock.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cameron.
Yep.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Remember to raise your hand through reactions.
Chair, we have Christine Sanchagrin who would like to speak.
All right, go ahead, Ms. Sanchagrin.
Very good.
Yep, we can hear you.
My name is Christine Sanchagrin. I live at 27725 Island View Road. And I'd like to first of all respond to one of the letters that was included in the packet. For those participating in the call, not all of the letters are publicly available at this time, but I would like to address one of those. And first of all, I'd like to say I oppose the variance request for Mayor Labadie and her dock violations. She did not follow the process of code compliance. Her dock does not meet grandfather requirements, and under the Planning Commission's requirements of hardship, she does not meet this hurdle. The variance should be denied. I do find it interesting that Ms. McNeil's letter was included in the variance request. She appears to be responding to a news story, not the variance that was included in the packet. I'm not exactly sure why it was included, but I do want to speak to some of the conjecture and false statements that are included as a document in the packet. First of all, Ms. McNeil has the right to disagree with the complaints, but her statement, the access was on our deed as well as others, and it was clear to all of us that a dock was not permitted, is false. I'm an owner of the property and her claim is unsubstantiated. She and her husband are not registered with the county as easement holders, nor have the owners of this property been presented with legal proof of their easement. Additionally, we have affidavits from an easement holder and an aerial photo from the 1970s that refutes Ms. McNeil's claims that there's never been a dock on the property. In addition, her comment that it's beyond odd that docks that have been on the lake for years are now under investigation is irrelevant. If someone purchased a home in the neighborhood that was found to have a code violation, the home would have to be brought up to code prior to sale. Would Ms. McNeil's belief that it was beyond odd for it to be corrected since it had been in the neighborhood for years even be worthy? It's not up to her opinion. It's what's required by code. Ms. McNeil's claim that there's been a dock on the property since the early 2000s, which Mayor Labadie cited earlier, is additionally irrelevant. No one, including the current owners, disputes this fact, but there is a dispute about whether or not the dock was changed. And I was disappointed to hear that the consultant did not even note that in her presentation. Because of that, that does not meet requirements for grandfathering, and that does affect the variance request. I would like to say that when false narratives are shared in the neighborhood, it it provides, unneighborly activity. And this is an example of something that was included in the packet that is irrelevant and it should be withdrawn. Lastly, I would say that Mayor Labody's dock, there's no legal way that it should be granted a variance. Her position as mayor for this variance request should be agnostic. We are all citizens in this community, and no one, including Mayor Labady, should be an exception to meeting the code requirements. In fact, if the Planning Commission chooses otherwise, they are admitting to special treatment to certain members of this community and not treating all members consistently under the code requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sandgren. Looks like Mr. Sandgren has his hand up. Should we unmute him next? There, Guy, we should be able to hear you now.
Great, thanks guys. Good evening, Shorewood Planning Commission and citizens. My name is Guy Sanchagrin. I live at 27725 Island View Road. I wrote a letter in opposition to the city's practice of providing special treatment to certain residents while dealing with others heavy-handedly. It is important that Shorewood's code enforcement processes are not arbitrary or capricious. Today, Shorewood's zoning enforcement process seems selective and subjective. In addition to the letter I submitted, I would like to pose the following questions. What is the purpose of the rules that we're looking at here? Is it safety, health, welfare? Understanding this is important. Second, if we grant this variance, shouldn't we question whether these rules should exist at all? When would the city actually enforce these rules? Third, why does Shorewood have any dock regulations at all? After all, Shorewood taxpayers pay for the city's membership in the LMCD, a government institution whose purpose is to harmonize the rules on Lake Minnetonka. Why do we need another full layer of special rules for Shorewood Lakeshore? Perhaps abolishing Shorewood's dock restrictions is the solution in place of a variance. This would solve many problems for the city and residents. How can the city justify punitively dragging two families through the criminal and civil court systems over the last 5 years, while at the same time allowing city officials to violate the code through variances and non-enforcement? How can these same city officials who do not adhere to the code turn around and enforce the same code on others? Clearly, Shorewood's rules only apply to certain residents. The blunt enforcement process felt by the common resident is very different than the process afforded the privileged and politically connected. Shorewood zoning enforcement should not be political. It should be based on the facts and the law. Moreover, residents who stand up to the city and disagree with the status quo are shut out, smeared, and denied a seat at the table. For me, Shorewood governance feels much like an oligarchy, not a democracy. In consideration of all these factors and more, this variance request should be denied as a first step for reforming our city government in the direction of equal treatment under the law for all Shorewood residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sandgren. All right. Does anyone else would like to speak? Please digitally raise your hand through the reactions button.
We have a hand raised from Mr. Davis.
Yeah, please give us your full name and street address and let us know what you want us to hear. Oh, we're not unmuted you yet. Hold on one second. There you go. We should be able to hear you now.
Oh, good. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Thank you. This is Marty Davis. I live over on Edgewood or in Birch Bluff here in Shorewood. And I wanted to listen in tonight because I've been watching a lot of this rhetoric over the past couple of years. And I'd speak to it in a couple areas. I think it's obvious that Jennifer's dock should be grandfathered in. It seems sensible and obvious that it complies to those parameters, if you will. And what bothers me and I wasn't going to speak until Mr. and Mrs. Sanderson did and said what they said, is that this is you talk about false narratives. If we ever have a platform where we want to talk about what went on that dock that they keep putting in the middle of all this stuff, I'll lay out the facts, and they won't be opinions. And if that happens, and it should happen, and Guy has come to see me a couple times, and I've told him, and he knows him. And I told him he stands too far from the truth in his representations. This sour grapes to go after a mayor like this. It's punitive to her decisions to do her job, and that's all she's tried to do, along with a lot of other people down there that I've seen indicted unfairly in rather aggressive conversations at the city meetings. So this is sour grapes. It's an effort to peck at this thing because they didn't get what they want. And if the truth gets known about what went on in that dock next to me down there at Howard's Point, they've been deceitful and decisive, and they're the ones who've caused the city to have to waste taxpayer money on such nonsense. So I would love to speak to that. I've spoke directly to them very respectfully. They know how I feel. They know I know the facts. All you have to do is call Brad Nielsen in and have him tell you what went on with that property down on the road. And the neighbors' letters that have been written in, those people haven't been informed of the truth. That's all. They're just being neighborly, and they don't know the truth. So to take a public official who sacrificed her time and her efforts for very little money and then get punitive with her over, I didn't get my sucker, is very, you talk about unneighborly. It's remedial behavior. And so with that, I have said my piece. I thank you for your time, and I look forward to visiting the other issue, which is the real issue here, when the proper platform allows for it. And I have decided we will talk about it in full at that time, and some people around town need to understand what really went on and how noble city officials have been throughout that whole process. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. All right, and just we're going to try to avoid responding to other people's statements. So maybe I should be more clear about this. Everyone will get to speak once. It looks like we've got two people who haven't spoken yet that do have their hands up. So let's, Director Darling, go ahead and choose one of them to speak next. So Ms. Rotuno, you should be unmuted.
Hi, thank you for listening. I live at 5525 Howards Point Road, and my name is Mary Rotuno. I am just here to support the variance and the request from Jennifer Labadie and David Labadie. They went through the proper channels, in my opinion. I believe that there was no malicious intent and that they did not receive any special treatment. I believe that this has become a personal issue in our community that has gotten out of hand, and the personal attacks on our mayor and our council have been downright childish. So I just want to speak my mind and say, you know, I do support the variance and appreciate your time and attention.
All right, thank you, Ms. Rotuno. All right, move on to Ms. Donahue is next. We'll get you unmuted and then we can hear you. Oh, almost. Try that again. There we go. Should be able to hear you.
Hi. My name is Mary Borgerson. Actually, Mary Bridget Donahue Borgerson. I've been watching this issue go along, and we've talked about...
Excuse me, your address, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. 5485 Grant Lorenz Road. I've been watching this go along, and there have been some discussions about whether it's legal, whether the dock was legal or not, and whether you have variance before you bring a dock into compliance. And I'm not attacking the mayor, but what I'm saying is that in a position of power, whether it's legal or whether it's ethical, it's always good to take the high road and not be hypocritical. I'm not calling the mayor hypocritical, but we've all been guilty of hypocrisy at some point or another, because you want something so badly that you can't see the conflict. And the dock issues in this community have become a really hot button issue. And I just suggest that Mayor Laverty bring her dock in compliance first and then ask for a variance. It might be a sacrifice on her part, but it would be a much better look ethically that first you make it legal, then you ask for a variance. And I'm of an age where we're very lucky to have a gender diverse city council and mayor. But when I graduated from high school, you couldn't get a loan as a woman. So our mayor and our two council persons are leaders in our community and are an example for other young women in our community. And I think you should hold yourself to a higher position and possibly yeah, we can all decide that, yes, it's a dock. I mean, we're not talking, it's a dock on a lake. It would be a much better look and not be so divisive if it could just be brought into compliance. And I would ask that the Planning Commission maybe point a better path. And I don't see attacking the
Wow, what happened?
Zoom meeting at a dump.
It's like the Zoom meeting's got an issue, huh, folks? So let's just stay here and be patient. Wait for them to get it back up. That lady had a great point, though. How about bringing your dock into compliance beforehand? And I'm sorry, Mr. Marty Davis, but to wait till after people talk to specifically take shots at them, to me, that shows some pretty poor character. But hey, that's just a turbine guy talking. What do I know? I don't own a super huge house that needed years to be built, and I'm not some huge megalith who owns all this, everything else in the world. And I'm not speaking down on high from everybody like he appeared to be, but I'll tell you what, that was low character as far as I'm concerned, to wait until they can't talk anymore to take shots, as opposed to talking about the application and whether or not it is appropriate. There's a turbine guy's take so far. As long as we're waiting, it's interesting to me that so many people, or so many people in government like this, seem to think that they can play the game and get what they want, but then they screw others over. Oh boy, now let me see. I don't want no update. Oh boy, I gotta do this upside down. Is that them? Is that them or me? There. Let me get my mouse. As far as what's going on in this meeting, Turbine Guy's got a couple of issues with how things have been presented. You know, I used to put a few docks in and out in some really muddy places. You know what? You just figure out how to do it. You don't whine and complain. There, later. Open. Let's get back in. I don't know if there's meetings even going on here. I'm just going to refresh it. See if that gets me back in. It's over off Howard's Point. If you know where Howard's Point Marina is it our internet that's down, Kaylor? If you know where Howard's Point Marina is, it's just to the left of there a little. I actually used to play over there when I was a kid. We'd take our old Chris Craft over there and hang out. Why isn't this thing refreshing? Fresh. Huh? Let me try it this way. There we go. Sure, my guy's having issues, but I'm trying to solve it. And I see we can't find this. What the heck? Oh, yeah. I used to go up to the little store there, and you'd buy suckers, and sometimes you'd get a free one. Told our internet's not down, but for some reason, this thing ain't working at all. Wonder if they crashed. Yeah, you just got to wonder what the heck's going on here, people. Sorry for this. Here's our internet's fine. Maybe they just didn't want to continue on, huh? You got in a second ago. Now what the heck's going on here? Get this back up if we can. One. For some reason this one's working, that's not. What? They might have kicked you out. Might have kicked me out. Yeah. Why would they do that? No, because you're the press. They don't want to light show. You can't kick me out. If they kick me out, Turbine Guy's gonna have an issue with that, guys. What, are you watching it, Kaylor? What's that say? Can't read. Please wait, the meeting host will let you in soon. Well, that's for you, not me.
Yeah, but why aren't I being let in?
Why can't I even find it? There you go.
Recording in progress. PM will bring this back to the commissioners to discuss and hopefully frame a motion one way or the other. Commissioners,
What the heck here?
What are you thinking?
So perhaps I can go first. And I think to some extent, I'm reiterating the point that I made in the earlier question.
Can you help me with the gimbal, please?
Here's my thinking, that the existing dock, the dock that existed, at least partially in its current configuration prior to the adoption of the code, is pivotal here. So, because there was much discussion in the comments of the residents about,
yeah, they definitely let it kick them.
Yeah, they might have kicked me out, folks.
Should be granted.
I think the turbine guy's been dumped on purpose.
I started to frame this, but let me frame the following analogy. So supposing there's a non-conforming lot, we have many in Shorewood. This is perhaps a lot that's too small, perhaps irregularly shaped for the given zone. And there's a house that existed on that lot prior to the code being adopted, restricting the setbacks and other criteria for building on that lot. So then it would be a legally non-conforming house, and the owner could continue to live in that house, could even rebuild on exactly the same footprint with no variance required. Furthermore, if the applicant wanted to modify the house, for instance, put on an addition, he or she would also be permitted to do that so long as the addition didn't increase the nonconformity of the structure. But there are many situations, and in fact, in the Planning Commission, this is perhaps the most common case that we consider, where somebody with such a property and with such a house wants to do something that's quite reasonable, for instance, put on a new deck. Now, putting on a new deck to that house would in fact increase the nonconformity, and so they're not permitted to do so without applying for a variance. The variance process is appropriate in that case, and again, it's the unique circumstances that dictate whether the Planning Commission recommends approval and the Council approves such a variance. So here we have a situation where there was a dock, an existing dock, partly in its current configuration that existed prior to the code being adopted, that restricted further information, which we are not only allowed to take into account.
I agree my civil rights were just violated.
That the current applicant,
We're going to have to find out about this.
Purchased the property with the dock in place, and based upon good faith, made modifications to the dock unaware of the code restrictions. After all, this happened 10 years ago. And that is something we can take into account in our deliberations. All told, it would seem to me that the grandfathering in of the dock, the legal nonconformity of part of the dock, and then the changes made to the dock, presumably without a knowledge that they were violating the code, which means that a variance is appropriate. And perhaps other commission members can comment on this. The notion that the Planning Commission would never recommend approval for any kind of variance of this type, I think is false, that we consider different cases, and each case is unique. There is no concept of a precedent when it comes to
That sounds like he's building up to approver to say that your dock's illegal, you've changed it, but you know what? We're going to give it to you because you're the mayor.
Again, based upon the fact that there was an existing dock in place there, and the notice of the code violation is being brought forward 10 years after the last modification. So further discussion on that, please.
That doesn't matter. 10 years doesn't matter.
All right, anyone else?
Code violation is a code violation.
Give your thoughts, commissioners. So I can, go ahead, Commissioner Hagenberger.
I want to set that aside for just a second and say something first of all, because I need to. There was an implication that if I choose to vote for approval of this variance or against approval of this variance, that I'm doing so because of some agenda that I have, a political agenda. And I have never done that. I vote for things because I think they're right or they're wrong.
He's setting it up too.
Do that in this case. So I just wanted to say that. As far as this variance, I think it's reasonable. I agree wholeheartedly with Mark, what he just said. He laid it out very well. I think it's just common sense that this variance was applied for when the applicant found out they weren't in compliance. They thought it was the best venue to take in order to make it compliant by getting a variance. And I think they've met all the criteria.
Okay, Commissioner Hagenberger, looks like we do have a hand raised on somebody who hasn't spoken before. Being this a digital platform, we're going to go back to make sure that everyone who does want to say something is heard by us. So can we unmute iPhone 2 and figure out who that is?
So formally reopen the public comment.
Yep, yeah, so it's 8:19, we'll reopen public comments just for this one person. And we'll give the benefit of the doubt that they just fighting with Zoom.
Hi there.
Okay, we can hear you now. Tell us your name and address and let us know. 3 minutes. We'll start.
My name is Kay McNeil and I live at 5620 Howards Point Road. And I do apologize. It did take me this long to even figure out how to raise a hand. I have absolutely no technical knowledge whatsoever. But since my name was brought up by one of my neighbors, I just felt that I should be heard. And all of this for me has been based on right and wrong. And I do or did have deeded access. I've been told tonight that I don't, but we do. And I just feel that what Mr. Davis and Mary and others have stated, that this has gone on too long. This is a personal vendetta against a mayor that we are very fortunate to have. I mean, this young mom and attorney that is willing to give her time.
Young mom and attorney.
Wonderful city that we live in. You know, I don't want to play the he said, she said either, but being that my name was brought up, I just wanted it out there that I wrote a letter based on what I knew of the dock, of having taken care of it for the owner, as well as just being grateful for these people that stand up and fight for Shorewood for the right things. And I've watched that little patch of property with history that other families have come in and tried to put docks on. They've rolled docks in and rolled docks off. Now, I've been called a liar. I've been, publicly shamed. I'm a grandma. I love the marina. We're fortunate that we have Mr. Davis that has brought this wonderful manager into our neighborhood marina, and all these people on this sweet street. We love it here. We don't need any more nonsense. Let these people do their jobs. Let the city perform what they need to do. Don't do this anymore. Put it to rest. I don't know about the legality of it. I don't want to know. My whole position was, let's support our mayor and do what's right.
I'm blocked.
And I support her 100%.
Hey, law breaking for the elite. What the heck?
Everybody that's working up there for us as city's people. And I approve the variance. Thank you.
They're all watching me.
All right, we'll close back down the public input portion. Although, within 20 seconds of 3 minutes. Thanks for that. Let's see here, it's 8:23. We'll close that back down and bring it back to the commission for discussion. And we'll sculpt a motion here coming up.
Chair Maddie, I'd like to register my opinion.
Mr. Huskins.
From what I've heard tonight and what I've seen in the packet, I think it's clear that there's been a dock there for a long period of time. And regardless of whether or not there were 2 slips or 1 slip, what I think I'm seeing in the photographs that's consistent over that entire period of time is the location close to shore of the extension along the shoreline. I have to believe that there's some purpose and reason behind that, why the dock would have been constructed that way initially.
It's cheaper.
Granted, in 2006,
That's why.
The code changed. But from 2006 to 2010, the aerial photographs do not show any change whatsoever that I can see with regard to the proximity of that portion of the dock to the shoreline. In the packet, we saw 2 dock experts express their opinion about the reason for leaving that structure in that place. And I, for one, am not knowledgeable about docks, but if people have been in the business for as many years as they have been, I'm willing to listen to their expertise.
Okay, the whole problem with these people is they don't understand grandfathering has nothing to do with the variance.
Difficulty here
If it's
is-
grandfathered
for me
in, it's
is
grandfathered
that
in. You don't get a
the time-
variance to get approval for a
timely,
grandfather.
uh,
You get a variance to get approval for something that's non-conforming, or will be non-conforming in the future. You can get an after-the-fact variance if you built something and get it after, but
I'm also persuaded
that just doesn't
the
apply
city
here.
didn't do anything to notify through inspection when that deed transferred to the owner. I take Jennifer's statement at face value that the first that she learned that she was not compliant with the 2006 code was when she received a violation notice.
No, she was mayor. She should know the
Like
ordinances.
Commissioner Rito, I'm struggling not to take into account the running with the property of a legally non-conforming structure, as I think this dock was in 2000.
You guys, they shouldn't even be
nonetheless
dealing with docks.
Here we are. I also asked earlier this evening whether or not there was any legal prohibition of approving variances retroactively. And our city attorney basically said there was no legal constraint against doing that.
Oh, another
So I
attorney.
take everything into consideration and review the applicant's variance application. I feel very comfortable in approving the variations.
The
Or
variations.
the variances.
Yeah, but I'll say my piece. I have struggled with this one. I know Jennifer wants us to not reference her as an elected official, but we don't have that luxury. We always need to make sure that especially our elected officials and people like me get held to a high standard. But at the same time, had the dock contractor in 2012 came and requested this variance because they got a silty, muddy pond, I'm sure we would have given it to them.
But he didn't.
I mean, even look, there's not even a principal structure at the dock next door. There's another dock that's right up against the shoreline. We do our best to work with homeowners to make them able to enjoy their property. And this doesn't seem like if any other person would have asked for this, we would have given it to them. I've been doing this for 9 years. That's where I'm resting right now. And I know it's tough.
It's not tough. It's pretty
But,
obvious.
Let's get back to forming a motion. I think all of us have kind of
Cities
stated
shouldn't
where we're at.
control docks. They abrogated that right
So
years
I
ago
can
to
take a
the
stab at this.
LMCD.
It seems that there are no staff recommendations here. So I'd like to move that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the two variance requests at 5510 Howards Point Road. The first to allow a dock greater than 4 feet in width, and the second for a variance to the dock setback from the ordinary high water level.
That's both ridiculous.
I second.
Right, the motion to recommend approval of both variance requests was made by Commissioner Riedel and seconded by Commissioner Huskins. I just want to clarify from staff, or maybe Mr. Shepard, by granting this variance, we're not allowing the dock to be further enlarged. We're saying that where it's at right now is as big as it's going to get. Is that correct? Or
You can't guarantee that.
Mr. Chair,
More, yeah.
we did have a staff recommendation in the staff report to recommend approval based on the findings in the staff report, which would allow the dock to remain in its current configuration without expansion.
And Termati, that's broadly true. So like if the letter of a variance states that you're granted a variance to a setback, it doesn't mean that then you can build something else within that setback. It's specific to the application always. I think that's implicit.
Okay. And it sounds like, yeah, the staff recommendations match that. So there is a motion on the table. Any discussion on the motion from the commission? All right, seeing no more discussion on the motion, we'll move into a roll call vote on recommending approval of the two variance requests. Commissioner Eggenberger,
Aye.
Commissioner Riedel,
Aye.
Commissioner Huskins,
Aye.
and Chair Matty also votes in affirmative. The motion passes 4-0. All right, thank you everyone for your participation. That's actually what the government looks like. So
Yeah, ugly. He did say that.
on to our next
Good
item of
job.
new
He did
business,
say that.
the
The
Urban
government
Farm
is ugly.
Animal City Code amendments and discussion, and I believe Director Darling is presenting this one.
Chair might ask for a 5-minute quality of life break before we get
That sounds great. Let's reconvene.
Quality
at,
of life break.
8:35.
Quality of life break, she said. You can't get more comical than that. Well, Turbine Guy's gonna chime in real quick before I sign off here. This is ridiculous. In order to get a variance, you have to have a problem with your land. There is no problem preventing putting a dock out farther or removing those inner parts. That's merely a want. So Turbine Guy's saying Shorewood Planning Commission absolutely dropped the ball here. Shorewood Planning Commission played favorites for their mayor. That's the Turbine Guy's opinion. And it's quite frustrating to watch things like this happen because they tried saying it was a vendetta against the mayor. No, it was a vendetta for the truth. It was a vendetta for equal treatment under the law. And that's what this was about, is the mayor gets to have her dock how she wants and others don't in that community, when the city shouldn't even be controlling docks because they abrogated that right to the Lake Minnetonka Conservation District years ago when they signed up for the LMCD. So any city in around Lake Minnetonka trying to control docks is actually putting double regulations on the control of docks, which is something we just don't need. We've enough times in this we've got double regulations and double this and double that. And you know, why didn't she just comply? Why not just comply? Using a variance application for to have something grandfathered in is not appropriate. It's not how it goes. Just not how it goes. That Urban Farm Animal City Code Amendment discussion, get rid of chickens. Tell you what that one is right now. No chickens. So, anyways, I think I'm going to shut this one down. I think we saw one more city in the Lake Minnetonka area play favorites for their elected officials. And we saw people denigrating others in their quest to help her. Pretty sad. Turbine Guy, signing off, folks.